أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وآل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Wanted to continue with weekly videos from this group. This week is just something I'm doing by myself. Hope everybody is enjoying themselves, being safe, trying to be healthy. We thank Allah for His favors, for His abundant mercy, His grace, for His guiding us to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We praise Allah. We hope our praise is accepted, as He is the one worthy of all praise, worthy of all thanks, worthy of all our obedience. We ask that He shower His blessings upon His final messenger and true servant, Muhammad al-Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was His final prophet and messenger to mankind, and who was sent in the best of nations and was the best of prophets, the best of men, the best of creation, the most honored of the creation, the most honored of the creation, the most perfect of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are a part of His Ummah, and that is a favor, the big favor. Allah has given us Islam. He has given us Islam and put us on the Ummah of His beloved messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the great favor, and Allah has already promised the believers success. Success is already theirs. Why would we turn away from that great favor and that great opportunity? If we believe and we hold on to what the Prophet ﷺ has been given and follow him, we will get that success. So, what I have titled Family History and Tasawwuf. Just going through some of my history as we start to allow for Tasawwuf to be spoken of freely, as it should be something spoken freely. I'm 36 years old now, 36 years old. And I didn't know that Tasawwuf was a primary science in the deen until a few months ago. And many of us are like that. And many of us, as black Muslims in America, still believe that it's something spooky or something goofy, or people were dancing around in circles and just mindless of the real affairs, or that it's a bid'ah, is a blameworthy innovation, or shirk, or they worship the graves, or they worship other than Allah through their dua and asking others, or they're misguided. They abandon fighting in the cause of Allah. So it's a lot of propaganda, a lot of money has been put into discounting the Tasawwuf from its rightful place. They said that King Fahd, the former ruler of Saudi Arabia, he spent $75 billion spreading his version of the religion, which made Tasawwuf as something that was blameworthy, something that was not to be studied, not to be a part of our deen. Like I said, I'm 36 years old, Muslim all my life, and just a few months ago, even after knowing about the Tasawwuf, I just learned that it was one of the primary sciences in the deen. And those who teach, they go to the hadith of Jibril alayhi salam, where he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his companions, and he appeared as a man who didn't have no signs of travel. And he asked us those questions. He came close to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sat close to him, and he asked him, what is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? And before he got to the next question, when he asked the first question, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered it. He told him the truth about Islam. Second question, first question, Iman. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he told the truth. Same with the second question and the third question, Ihsan. And Ihsan, each of those aspects of Islam relate to the three sciences, the three primary sciences. We have Iman relating to the science of belief, Tawheed, of Aqidah. And then we have Islam relating to the science of al-fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence. Then we have Ihsan relating to Tasawwuf, or Tazkiyah, purifying the heart. And that's right there. That's the proof. That's a Sahih hadith. That's a strong hadith. And that's mentioning. That's where a proof for Tasawwuf being a primary science. That's what they use when they teach those who are learned, those who study with the scholars of Tasawwuf. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My brother Imam Malik, one of my Sira teachers. How are you? So they use that hadith in teaching that Islam, Ihsan relates to Tasawwuf as a primary science. And then one of our teachers, like for example, Imam Naim, he'll use some of the books of the Shaykh Uthman Danfodio to refer to Tasawwuf as the inner branch, refer to Iman as the root, refer to Islam as the outer branch. And Shaykh Uthman Danfodio, now he was somebody I heard about as young. I was young. We were young when we heard about him, because at one point, one of my brothers that's a few years older than me, my father was going to name him after Uthman Danfodio. And what happened was, my brother that's older than him, he was a twin. And if that other twin of his would have lived that died at childbirth, then he would have named him Hassan. And he would name my brother that lived, who came after Hassan, as Uthman Danfodio. So we knew young about him, even we didn't know enough to appreciate who he really was and the extent of his scholarship and the importance of his scholarship. I mean, till much later, as he's one of the great scholars of West Africa, and who some considered a mujaddid, one of those who revived the deen. There are those who consider that, because it can be possibility to be more than one mujaddid at a certain time, and sometimes Africa can be discounted by some as legitimate places for stuff like that to occur, and the history can be overlooked. But Africa has its own rich history of Islamic scholarship in various places, West Africa, North Africa, all throughout Africa. There is a rich history of Islam and Islamic scholarship, and he was in a high level of scholarship. His brother, and they passed it down to their family. So, Uthman Danfodio, one of my brothers was almost named after him, but he was one who explaining like that. I don't know who all explained it like that, but he was one who explained it like that, and that's what our teacher, one of our imams, my imam, I call him my imam, Imam Naeem Abdullah, out of Pittsburgh. Well, he's at Pittsburgh, not originally from Pittsburgh, but he explained it that way from the Shehu, that Tasawwuf is the inner branch, Islam the outer branch, and Iman, that's the science of belief, as the root. So I wrote some stuff down for starting. It's an oral tradition in my family, going back to Sudan from my father. He was actually passed down an oral tradition, through slavery, that reached his father, who was born in 1912. My father was what they call an old folks baby, because his father was nearly 40 when he had him. Grew up in Cleveland. He had to leave the South because his father had struck a white man with a shovel or something, because that white man had tried to sexually molest or sexually assault his wife. And then his father, my great-great-grandfather, was tipped off. He was a Mason, and I'm thinking you mean some blacks became Mason. This is, he was born in my great-grandfather was born in 1850, and some of the blacks became Masons, I believe, because it was a way for them to try to get some type of political leverage. I don't think they necessarily were just about believing everything that was there, but they wanted to use it to their advantage. And think about it, he's in the deep South in Georgia, which is outside of a town that's known as Calhoun, Georgia, which was in Curryville, which is a small town, and a lot of farms. Go there now is Black Angus cattle, a lot of farmland. One of the most famous singers in the world in the early time, his name was Roland Hayes. He's from there. So that climate, racist plan, all that, you do something to a white man, they was going to get you. So that's what happened with my great-grandfather, where he was tipped off about his son defending his wife in her honor, that they were going to kill him. And he, like I said, he was a Mason. I'm thinking, you mean they used that? You mean not just because they wanted to be Mason, to believe that and try to belong, but they try to use it for a type of political advantage or different advantages, because he was tipped off, get your boy out of town. So he had enough time to have my great-grandfather get out of town, and he came to Cleveland. He went to Cleveland, and my great-grandfather followed up. That's how he was raised up in Cleveland. But somehow that tradition passed that down about that line of my family being from Sudan, and my father believed it. He was confident about it. He wasn't worried about anybody questioning him about it. He believed that line was from Sudan, and he was past the oral tradition. So maybe with my great-grandfather, because there's some type of tie as far as the Masons with Islam, So I don't know if he knew anything or had any traces of Islam in that too. That was attractive, but it was a cause that Allah used to save. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used to save my great-grandfather to continue our line, for my father to even be born, for my grandfather to even be born. My grandfather was young at the time. Yeah, he was already born so he moved his family to Cleveland. So we got that Sudan oral tradition, and there's a lot of history as far as black Muslims now in Sudan, whether those of us who went over there to study, and we have history as far as people coming from Sudan to spread Islam. I probably butchered the name, Sati Majid. Somebody can help me out with that. That he came in the early part of the 20th century and established communities for black Muslims in different cities. And even in Akron, Ohio, I think they might have been connected to the Pittsburgh community even back then, because when my father had became Muslim, it was an older community in Akron, Ohio, who had, like, didn't really survive, and one of my father's emirs, his security emir, was telling me, like last year, that they told my father's community, like, for them to try to be serious and, be serious, don't get wiped out like they got wiped out, So it was an older community. This is early 70s. So you figure, if they were 60 years old, they had been around for a long time, maybe 20s, 30s, who knows? But we know it was connection with Sudan back then that allowed a community in the early part of that 20th century to flourish in different cities. And then you got others who benefit from going to Sudan. And my father even briefly was able to go to Sudan, and we'll tie that in later. So we have the West Africa. I know where one side of my family is from. In West Africa, I think it's Gabon. I just found out there's one side of my family on my mother's side where they did the history. They did extensive research on the history and the DNA and all that, and that were not just for one person, but they try to get a group of the members of that other side of the family, tested, and they trace it back to one of those countries in West Africa. And I'm thinking the same with the rest of that family, West Africa. Whereas most of us are descended from West Africa, and a lot of us were descended from Muslims, and we're just bringing Islam back to our family, whether it's a second generation, third generation, or first generation. Islam is coming back to our family, and not just something that never was. It was a large percentage of Muslims for a time period were a large percentage of slaves that came over here from a time period were Muslims, and for that you have to look at the research of Professor Bilal Ware. He did a lot of research of that, and he even went as far as to suggest that some of us may have been descendants of the Habib Nabi Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you never know who we're dealing with, So now my great grandmother Laura Ackland, I'll start there as far as spirituality in my family on this side, and she was on my father's mother's side, my father's mother's mother, his grandmother on that side, and she would go to the woods, dress up in all white, and pray and fast for 40 days. She would prostrate facing the east, dress up in white, modest clothing, and she was like different than, I guess, most of the people that was around her. And she would even call out the preachers and stuff, in the church. Like he's lying about this, and they would find out it would be true. Somebody might have been involved in some type of immoral behavior, or some type of immoral sexual behavior, or something like that. She would be able to call them out. So she was very different. Even that, I told a story where she, when she was in the woods praying and fasting for 40 days, where a wolf came as close to her where she can smell his breath, and she wasn't fearful of a wolf. And like we most of us never seen wolves, but like if we even seen a picture of it standing next to them, those are some huge animals, tall, just on four legs, they're tall, and she's probably on the ground and looking up. Yeah, she's looking up at the wolf from the ground, so she's seeing how big it is and everything, how fierce it is. And she's a woman, not a big woman, in body size, and she's by herself in the woods, and this wolf is close to her where she can smell his breath, and she wasn't fearful of it. She rebuked it. She rebuked it, you mean, in the name of God. So she had that certain gift, even where like she would be able to go to the well, and they would try to predict like things that would happen to him throughout the year, and she would have dreams. Like she had a dream. I think she had a dream about her daughter. Her daughter was my father's mother, Sarah James, and my father would later name one of his daughters after his mother, Sarah, but she died in childbirth. I think she died in my mother's. She came out stillborn. And that would have been my sister after me. And that was the reason why I didn't get the full 2 years of being suckled on breast milk, because she was pregnant. My mother was pregnant again, and she had to save that for Sarah, who was coming after me. So I didn't get the full term. I think 9 months. And I had to get weaned after 9 months. I was on breast milk for 9 months. And then Sarah died. So he had a great love for her, even though she would die when she was 4. So great-grandma Laura had a dream where these white things were eating up the red things, and she told her about, like, this happened to you, you mean? And it would come out later, you mean, when my father was young, when he was 4 years old, that's what his mother died from leukemia. I mean, y'all know better. You might know better than me. So how can you express it? Like the white blood cells eating up the red blood cells, and how the cancer is. So she died of leukemia, and her mother had seen that dream, you mean, and put it into words to the level that she could understand, you mean. She saw the dream at a level that she could understand at the time. But it turned out scientifically what happens, biologically what happens when leukemia affects somebody. So his mother inherited that from his grandmother Laura, and she was pregnant with my father. She would not allow them to rub any type of cream that had pork in it. She said, "No, my baby's going to be special. If you give me something to rub on my belly, it has to be pork free." And she would see stuff. One time she had a dream about her close first cousin on that side of the family, same side of the family, that she was pregnant and the baby had died inside, and the stuff was leaking and it was becoming toxic inside her. And she was shocked because she didn't even tell anybody she didn't know she was pregnant. And so her cousin was able to save her life by that. She was able to save her cousin's life by law's leave to get whatever had to be done to get that baby out. So she had signs early on of her gift. And before she left, she told my father to take care of his father and his sister at the time. So he had one sister at a time, one sibling at that time, and he was told as a 4-year-old, take care of them. So you can imagine that, the heavy thing. So, and she died, and that was the last conversation he had with her. Now, when she died, he was able to actually still remain a connection with her, and that's well known within the family. And if you ask any of my cousins on that side, they will tell you that I talked to one of his first cousins. She said that his mother never left him. He had a great non-biological mother when my grandfather remarried, but also his birth mother never left him. So these were spiritual women. They believed in that. And she would come to him in dreams, starting in childhood. He actually saw her while he was awake in childhood after she passed. And he would see her awake, he would see her asleep. So as he got older, that he was able to inherit those traits from her, and he would help different people out with different things that would be life-saving by inheriting those traits from her. And so at one point when he was a teenager in a black power struggle of the 60s, he had faced a situation where he was facing some charges. They was trying to place a charge on somebody. They was trying to get somebody, try to make it stick on somebody. He wasn't even fully grown yet. He had gotten involved in the black power struggle as a teenager, maybe 15 years old. And he was stuck. They were trying to throw a charge on him. And he was very nervous, very worried. And it happened to be a brother, older brother, that was in there in the holding cell with him. And he told him, just do this. He gave him some type of dhikr to do. Say these type of dhikrs. And he did those dhikrs, and he felt calm. He was relaxed. And then after that, the charges were dropped because they had some illegal thing with the gun to try to prove it that it was his or on him. Because they was trying to make this charge stick on somebody, no matter who it was. Black teenager, old man. They was trying to get somebody. He even almost got killed by the cops too. So we take it from there. So okay, he's around. So he's around Islam. First time he heard Islam was in a nation temple, and he heard the minister say, "In the name of Allah." So that's the first time he felt awe about the name of Allah, was in a nation temple. And he tells that story. He used to tell that story to me. In the name of Allah. So that did something to him. But he missed his chance of meeting Malcolm because he was about 14, and he wasn't ready yet. Malcolm had came to Cleveland, and he had a friend who had an older brother who was inspired by Malcolm, and listen to Malcolm, and he wanted to take them to see him, but he wasn't ready, so he missed his chance to see Malcolm. And he would later meet those who were close to Malcolm, but he missed his chance to see Malcolm, but he was still inspired by Malcolm and had a love for Malcolm as a teenager and was interested in learning about Malcolm. And so that was a way that by Allah's leave that Malcolm, he was able to be led to Islam by the works of Malcolm, just like many of us black Muslims, were led to Islam by Allah's leave through Malcolm. So when he does become Muslim, he wasn't ready to take it serious yet. And like at that time, they didn't really know a lot. It was only one. It was the Quran. If they wanted to read the Quran, they had to go to Cleveland to be able to read the Quran. And if they wanted to read a translation of the Quran, they had to go to Cleveland. There were no hadiths. The hadiths were translated. They didn't have any hadith books. The first hadith book that was translated that was available was like a summarized version of the Sunnah, and I think it was a summarized version of the six, and that was the first one. And in the 70s, I think Abu Dawud might have been the first one translated, and then Sahih Muslim. So they didn't have access to a lot of information. They traveled to Pittsburgh on a bus to learn the fiqh that was available at the time. There was a teacher that was teaching fiqh of Sunnah. So they have access to the traditional knowledge. And so he came into a community where the Imam was already part of the Dar. So by the time which was a few years, into it, he was security Amir and worked his way up, getting respect through the rod, and was able to work his way up and get respect. And then there was something that happened where that Imam had to be removed. He tried to escape. He sensed something. Maybe he had a dream or something, But he sent something. He went all the way to New York to try to get away. They told him, you got to come back, you know. You got to be the imam. So he became the imam then. Was he 20, 22? And he was in college. He was very smart. He could have been some type of professor or something, you mean, if in the right context. There's a lot of our black men that were very intelligent, you mean, but they sacrificed their intelligence for different things, power struggle, you mean, different things, you mean, where they didn't have the environment to develop that, you mean, to develop those PhDs and stuff back then, you mean, from a lot of our elders, you mean. So he was one that was scored high on a test early called the Mensa test, you mean. So it's very intelligent. So he was on that path, you mean, to be some type of professional or PhD guy or something. But he left college early, and he had the Akron U takeover. Left early, we had the Akron U takeover, and they still wanted to give him an honorary degree, which he didn't accept. But he left college early and was an imam early, 22 years old. So he takes all that he already had from both sides, and as a young imam, one time they were having they were sleeping. I think they were sleeping in the masjid, and he had this dream. So let's get into more of his Islamic starts and origins of Tasawwuf. He had a dream. He's somewhere, and it's a man giving a talk to his companions. And as he looks at the man, he's peering from behind this wall, and he just like, someone was like, man, this man was so beautiful. He felt something like, he was second guess himself in the dream, like something wrong with me. That's, like a fag to feel like I'm not gay, to feel like this. To feel this man is so beautiful, you mean, but the man was so beautiful in the dream, you know. And as he's peering behind, he got caught. The man said, you have to wake up your brothers or your companions for Fajr. And he woke up. And he later talked to some different people who can give him an interpretation. I don't know exactly when, but they told him that he had seen how he described him, that he had seen the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in his dream. So that was one of the beginnings of his relationship with the beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, inshallah, and Allah knows best. So he told me that his first sheikh of Tasawwuf was black, was an African American, imam. And in the Dar, we know the origins of Dar Islam. They started with Sheikh Dawood. They broke off, feeling their needs weren't getting met. Sheikh Dawood, who had a connection to Tasawwuf, was believed to be a muqaddam of a sheikh, an African sheikh, and Imam Yahya Abdul-Karim, as leading the Dar, was given Tasawwuf, teaching Tasawwuf to only a select few, and do it in secret. It wasn't the context for Tasawwuf. You had the strong Wahhabi influence in the foundations and the methodology of the Dar, that didn't permit open Tasawwuf. But Imam Yahya Abdul-Karim was teaching Tasawwuf to select. So I forgot to ask my father who exactly it was, African American Imam, but that would make sense that it could have been Imam Yahya Abdul-Karim who gave him his initiation to Tasawwuf. So, because he had private meetings with Imam Yahya Abdul-Karim as the Imam, even like one time when he messed up and he did something where he was woofing at the Nation of Islam about something. He was young and dumb, you mean? Like, man, y'all liars, such and such, you mean? And it got so bad that he had to get called to New York. And that you came, you mean, they pick you up, you know. He wasn't, oh, I'm ready, I'll come later. Be ready, we're going to pick you up. So took him there, and they was outside punching the trees. They showed him they was out there punching the trees. It's like, you almost caused a war, you mean. He had so much respect and reverence. He had so much high regard for his Imam Yahya, that he said he wanted to almost go into, if he can fit into a crack in the floor, he would, you mean. So he, in a good way, you mean, as his elder, as a senior Imam, he corrected him and tried to teach him a lesson without making him feel too horrible, you mean. So that's what he did. So I'm mentioning that because after the split, when the Imam Yahya Abdul Karim went with Sheikh Jilani, they had the opportunity to meet Sheikh Jilani. I mean, different communities had a chance to meet him in New York when he was in New York and see if that's something they wanted to do, you know. And some communities didn't want to go because they wanted the black leadership, and also, you mean, whoever still had the Wahhabi influence in their methodology, that wouldn't be permitted to go to Sheikh Jilani. You mean, their teachers wouldn't permit them to go to Sheikh Jilani. You mean, especially if they were getting money from those Saudis. You mean, because, you know, some were getting money from the Saudis. You know, we never got any money from them. We didn't go that route, but we did go to the offshoot that was available at the time. That's why my father was learning from fiqh sunnah, which is not traditional fiqh. You mean, somebody was trying to bring all the madhabs in one, and end up actually, you mean, attacking positions of the madhabs in there. But that's what the fiqh was available at the time to him. So he would go to Pittsburgh as a 19-year-old and learn from fiqh sunnah. So that was his fiqh that he was learning, and so we was always giving somebody else's version of Islam, somebody's version of Aqidah, of Iman, somebody's version, because they, like I said, they had the Wahhabi version, so they had the Wahhabi books, the Kitab al-Tawheed. Someone was learning that, you mean. Some weren't learning that, but they had a heavy presence. So, you know, it was money coming in, you know. So some weren't permitted to follow that, and some, you mean, they just genuinely, you mean, wanted black leadership to remain. So you had that, and then with Islam, with the fiqh, same thing, Wahhabi version of fiqh and approach to Quran, and you had that fiqh sunnah, which is like another guise for some of the Wahhabi methodology. So they went and saw Jilani, and, you know, he felt good enough to follow Imam Yahya into going and joining his organization. So that's when the dhikr became available. Tasawwuf became available to everybody that was within the group, within the national, international Jamaat, whoever stayed. Tasawwuf became available, so they had a dhikr program. It was dhikr when they exercise, they group dhikr. They had certain weird that went along with the dhikr. You mean, it was the dhikr part of the weird, but they had other recitations of the Quran. I had a picture of a book that my mother showed me that they learned while they were in the Fukra, that they had. It's called Panshur Sharif. So if anybody's familiar with that, you can look it up. And it has, like, you might recite Yasin 7 times or something. You know, you had different surahs and different verses of Quran that you recite as part of your daily weird. And you had different du'as, different prayers upon the Prophet ﷺ. You had something developed, like one of the tapes I had, and I had my brother upload it onto the Google Drive. That way we weren't dependent on a cassette tape, because the cassette tape survived from then, or a couple brothers in the Fulcra, and my the mere security of my father, that he knows those brothers, so we still have that document, you mean, in the form of a tape, you mean, of them, you mean, talking about that there's a tape of Tasawwuf and their experience of the Tasawwuf and their sheikh and their regard for their sheikh. And so we had that on tape, we had it on CD, but we have it more preserved where my brother, the computer guy, one of the computer guys, was able to put it up to the Google Drive, to copy it to Google Drive, and have everybody on their Google Drives. So we have that history, because it's a part of our history, even though we only stayed in that group for 3 years. So during those first 3 years, so they get to solve, they was happy. You mean, a lot of those brothers, you know, it was a lot, you mean, going on. If stuff is open, you mean, some stuff can't be talked about, some stuff was talked about after certain people died and documented in books. You know, you talk about in New York, or the incident at Yassin Masjid, where Imam Yahya Abdul Karim had a meeting with Imam Tawfiq, and it led to a couple of members on both sides being killed in the masjid. And the policy was after that where no guns were able to be bring in the mosque. But it was like, it was rough, you mean, environment. You had those elements where you had a lot of roughness and not a lot of spirituality there. You mean the center stuff, you mean. You had a heavy Wahhabi influence, and you had people coming from the Black Power struggle, who was already sometimes getting into it with the police and almost killed by the police. So you had Vietnam vets, you know, who came back to this environment without getting able to really detox from that environment. So you had a lot there where we really needed the true Islam. We didn't need anybody else's version of Islam. And with that, you had you mean, elements ripe for conflict, you mean, and sometimes it was fatal, you mean. Some brothers died, and some brothers, you mean, had shootouts and stuff, you mean. But they were trying to do the best they can, and they established a lot for us, you mean. They did a lot for the community. They had their masjids in the communities. They lived around the masjid. They food programs, clothing programs. Community loved them because they protected the community. I know in my father's community, they wouldn't allow any Arab stores. One time it was an Arab guy and his family. They tried to open up a store, and they told him, you know, no, you got to leave. You can't open this up in our community. And they left, you mean. And even the police were like, you mean, calling the Godfather, calling my father the Godfather, you mean, and trying to suggest that he should handle certain situations that they didn't want to handle with stuff like that. So definitely had a great love for the Dar. That was, you mean, the time of my father's life and my mother's life, you mean, where they made the best of their friends and the closest of their friends, and it was service, you mean, to the community. And that's what, you mean, Tasawwuf is about, serving humanity. Like, listen to Imam Naeem yesterday in his cookbook talking about Abdullah, you mean, and the Prophet ﷺ having the choice to be either a king prophet or a servant prophet. And Jibril advised him to be a servant prophet, you know. A servant prophet, you mean. Humbleness, adab, you mean. That's what Tasawwuf is. Adab, you know what I mean. And that was a big part of his adab, you mean. And choosing that, you mean, to elevate himself, you mean, in his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He chose to be a servant prophet. And he mentioned in the Quran where Surah Isra, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to him as his servant. You mean, that he took his servant. He didn't say he took his messenger. He didn't say he took his prophet. He took his servant on the journey, you mean, when you're talking about Isra. His servant, you mean, that high status of being Abdullah, which is a status of servitude to the people. And that's when Imam, in his cookbook, Imam Naeem had mentioned, you know, that being Abdullah, you be that by serving the people. So that's a high prophetic example of serving the people. And he chose to be a servant prophet, that's taking the advice of Jibril alayhi salam, And we saw that throughout all his life, and that's how he was raised to the highest status, to be the most perfect of Allah's creation, and the best in character, and the most honor of Allah's creation, through his servitude to his servitude to the creation, serving Allah by serving his creation. So they have the Tasawwuf open there, and they would meet up sometimes in different places like Philadelphia, and they will have the group. You have the group dhikr. You mean sometimes they'd be in formation, doing the dhikr's in formation. They're doing an exercise. So that was one of the good things about that. But when they went to California, stuff got different for some of them, and that's when our family left the Fukra. So it was a 3-year period there. And at the same time, so we're talking about the Tasawwuf, and we're talking about like the versions of Islam. We talk about how in the Dar they had somebody else's version of Islam. You had the heavy Wahhabi influence and Wahhabi funding to some, because they're not going to give you the money unless they can control your methodology and make you a slave to them. So despite that, they did a lot. They really did a lot in the Dar. And the same thing. So in the Fukra, they had they had somebody else's version of Islam, somebody else's version of Tasawwuf. Even the Tasawwuf was open, it still was somebody else's version of Tasawwuf. And so with that, our family left. There were some problems where our family left. And, this is made for TV version. So they left. And with leaving in the early 80s, having to start over, we never joined any organization after that, Stuff got rough, so we never joined. My father never joined any other organization after that. It was a time later when one West African Sharif, West African descendant of Prophet ﷺ, loved him. We met with him privately. He was very personal with us. Very good with us. Very good treatment with us. Even one time we just happened to stumble upon him. That's how it never happens by accident. But we had already had we talked to him before? But something was going on. This particular incident where we were somewhere else with some family, some non-Muslim family, in some type of reunion in Columbus, and we weren't living here yet. Well, at that time, some of my brothers were living here. So, this is going later. But connecting. As far as my family not joining any type of organization after that, after the Fukra, from the Dar to Fukra, they never joined any organization again. So we come upon one of our cousins who happened to be Muslim on that particular side of the family. He tells, okay, here's somewhere we can go pray. And they were having some thing, the West African Muslims, West African Tijanis from Senegal, they were having a thing called the Dhaka. So the treatment was, the adab was very well. The adab was very well. They and so we're bringing in hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where, no, not hadith, it's a statement of one of the scholars that whoever outstrips you in adab, they outstrip you into tasawwuf. Whoever outstrips you in the manners and the behaviors and the humbleness that goes with them, they outstrip you in tasawwuf. And there's another statement of Ahmed bin Zayn bin Habashi that tasawwuf is all adab. It's all those manners and behaviors. Everything we do has an adab. Our relationship with Allah, any type of act of devotion, our relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, our relationship with our family, with our fellow Muslims, with the non-Muslims, with our eating, anything small or big has adab, a specific adab attached to it. They said adab is all manners and behaviors. So we there. The Sharif, he's there with his sheikh, I believe. And you know what they did? He got different brothers. They told us, me, my father, my cousin, and somebody else might have been with us. They said for us to come eat with them where they were eating from, the dish that they were eating from. They brought us close and had us eat with them. It was their dad was, the sheikh, his dad was something else. So when it was time to pray, we lined up. We're taking our positions. We're somewhere in the back. The sheikh who couldn't speak English, he told the translator to say, "We know why you're here. You're here to get your treasure." But we didn't plan to come. We didn't know anything about that event. We were somewhere with non-Muslim family, family reunion type thing. And we just were looking for somewhere to pray. We just happened to, our cousin that was Muslim down there just happened to come by and happened to take us there. We said, "We know why you're here. You're here for your treasure. You're here for your treasure." And he told us to come to the front row of the Salat line. He had us come he stopped before he started to pray. He had us come to the front row of the Salat line. And that's the sheikh. Couldn't speak English. Was only there for a short time. And then, boom. And then when he had us come to the front, say, "You're here for your treasure." And then it's time to make a dua. They wait for the big sheikh to make the dua, He didn't make the dua. He told the Sharif, we call him the Sharif, because he was descendant of the Prophet ﷺ. Told him, he said, "No, you make the dua." He told him to make the dua. He said, "You're closer to Allah than me." And that was the adab there, He said, "You make the dua." So, and that Sharif he offered, like, one of the private meetings, he did offer my father to be like his representative. But we were leery because my father was leery because of what they had went through, before, Because that was a very traumatizing thing, Moved out to California, and you have to come back, start all over, community's gone. One of my father's regrets, that he took it on himself, he took the blame on himself because he was responsible for leading his family out, leading his community out there, where his community went out there. And not all of them was able to stay. Some stayed with the group, Even his security members stayed, and they remained close despite their differences as far as the group. But so that's a big move. We had to start all over, And that's how I got to my hometown where I was raised, Canton, Ohio. It was Akron. They had a community, but they had to leave. Didn't own the mosque. They didn't get a chance to own it, so the mosque was lost. Everything was gone. Coming to Canton, he's just working. He has his business. He's doing trade. He's selling incense and oils, and he has other stuff to go along with it. But now, to do that, they had to have a large family. He couldn't just be on the corner anywhere. Not saying anything bad about somebody that's trying to do that on the corner, whatever. But he had a large family to be able to provide for his large family in the way he wanted to provide for them. And he was prided at that time. He prided on his wives to be home, and not have to work and just work for him. He'll take them along and have one watch the kids. He wanted them to not have to work, So in order to do that, he had to get into the white markets. And that's where he got plugged into the white markets. He got plugged into somebody who had this thing setting up craft shows where you can be different places, different cities. And you had to have a certain presentation to get her approval, to get plugged in by her, You had to have a certain presentation. So he got plugged in by her, and he was able to go establish different routes, different cities that he would go to every year, most weekends of the year, Just about every weekend of the year, he's on the road, these different places. When he got larger, he had a crew where he might have two all at one time, where he has a crew out and somebody else has a crew out. So he had to do that to be able to provide for his family in the business of oils and incense. But it was pride on being his own, having his own business. Different things. Because he was from the South. He wasn't born in the South, but he went to the South every year. He was 4 years old when a police officer picked him up from drinking out the wrong drinking fountain by the collar and said, "Little nigger, can't you read?" He saw racism towards his father, where his father had to hold him back. From the store clerk calling his father boy. And he was a young man. He wanted to to do something that would have got them both killed, you mean. So he saw all that, you mean. He lived with segregation. He was told one time by a supervisor, you mean, who just gaslighted him, saying that you black people got it good. You don't have to be the boss, you mean. So just all that, just think about that. Just think about how, like, Malcolm X, when he was gaslighted, like, when he wanted to be a lawyer, he told him, the teacher told him, like, we like you. I mean, trying to act like they're being nice, like they're their friend, like they're a supporter. I mean, we like you, but a lawyer is not a realistic occupation for a nigga. You know what I mean? So that, you mean, dealing with that and dealing with the power struggle, black power struggle, where if you got recognized as being on the Fed watch list or something like that, they always had to follow you. So he had it in his bloodline, where his father was entrepreneur, his grandfather was entrepreneur. They had their business and stuff like that. So it was in his bloodline to be that anyway. Now, so he got plugged in. So he just thinking about taking care of his family. You mean, he wasn't thinking about even being an imam again. It just so happened that he plugged into somebody who was doing shows with him, who had a son studying overseas. So they go overseas. He invites him to come overseas with them. And this is like late 80s. Invites him to go overseas with them. Like I said, he wasn't thinking about becoming an imam no more. Just take care of his large family. Stay out the way. Stay away from people. It's hard for him to trust people, organizations. You know what I mean? Just stay out the way. There wasn't no internet. Wasn't no social media. You know what I mean? You weren't connected. Wasn't nobody coming, and people that studied in droves weren't coming back bringing the knowledge yet. You know what I mean? It wasn't that era. You were cut off. You know what I mean? So it still wasn't a time where traditional Islam was readily available to us. So he had what he knew. He was with his family. Goes to Sudan. He takes his trip, and he's there for a few weeks. Go to Egypt. I think maybe Egypt first, then Sudan. And I said his friend that he met while doing these craft shows invites him to come over there. So he goes over there. Never planned to go there. Never planned to go to Sudan. Like I said, he had an oral tradition about Sudan. So this is just something that he didn't plan for happening. He didn't plan to meet this brother. He didn't have a way to get there like that. But it just so happened that his brother had a son that was studying overseas. So he goes to Egypt, sees different things. Meets different, learned. He had the dream where he saw a funeral procession, and he told him to stop. This one's not dead yet. And he was able to bring him back to life by Allah's leave. They took him to, he had met a sheikh, and the sheikh interpreted that he would revive dead hearts. He had to revive dead hearts. He was in Sudan, same thing. And we really centered on a story in Sudan about the sheikh in Sudan. What happened was he went to see him, and he noticed like spiritual vibe of it, but it's this old little black sheikh, and he doesn't speak English. So he gets in there, he wants to pray. Tell him, no, you don't have wudu, go make wudu. But he had wudu, but he told him to go make wudu. So he goes to make wudu, and he comes back, said, translator, told the translator, you don't have wudu, go make wudu. Goes make wudu. Comes back the third time, go make wudu, you don't have wudu. So he did really concentrate, really focus on the wudu, getting everything, doing all the sunnahs, doing everything. He comes back, and the sheikh has the translator say, now that the woman is no longer on your eyes anymore. She's not on your eyes no more. And he's like, what woman? So the sheikh describes the woman, what she was wearing and everything like that. And he hadn't told anybody about this woman. It was a woman that he had, a beautiful sister that he saw on the bus, He just looked at her, saw she was attractive, But it affected him that the sheikh was able to see him and see her on his eyes. You mean, this was a sheikh of unveiling. You mean, those who travel the path, those who are really men of Tasawwuf, Allah gives them unveiling where they can see stuff like that. You mean, so he was able to see the woman on his eyes, even though he had to mention her and describe down to the T what she was wearing. So he brings them in. After that, after they pray, he brings them and he talks to them, he welcomes them. His adab is just great, you mean, and he's giving high praise for the Muslims of America. He's happy to see him, you mean, and he tells them, you mean, among things that he tells them, that that his job was to wake their hearts. And he had that same dream that he had in Egypt. He got the interpretation of that. You mean, this time it was a boy, and he stopped the funeral procession and said he's not dead. And it was interpreted the same way. It would be somebody reviving dead hearts, and he was given confidence of his mission and whatever other secrets that the Sheikh gave him, whatever traces and secrets that the Sheikh gave him, he gave him, you mean, and whatever confidences he gave him. So he left Sudan with a lot of secrets from that trip, you mean, whatever he gave him, you mean. But at the same time, it still was not known, you mean, because he didn't learn, you mean, in his experience with the Dar, and experience with his experience with the Fulcrum about Tasawwuf being a primary science and something to be in the open with. So he came out, you mean, his kids were young, we were young, and whoever was older, but it was still something that he didn't talk about, you know. His wives knew, you know. Like my mother being one, she knew, and she accepted that, you know what I mean, and she had already been with him, you mean, when he was in the Fulcrum, so she was already in the Tasawwuf, but she was now being exposed to whatever secrets that he had got from Sudan. But it was still something quiet. I never heard the word Tasawwuf growing up, something that wasn't known, you mean. I grew up with him, you mean, living in the same household as him, but never heard the word Tasawwuf. Never heard about those experiences until I was later. And he almost wasn't ready to tell me. It just happened that I grew up, you know what I mean, and I had some issues. I grew up in a loving household with my parents, you know what I mean, but they can't protect you from everything. So sometimes some people in the outer circle, they can cause you to have trauma, you know what I mean. So I was traumatized and wasn't able to process that trauma, wasn't able to understand that trauma, and that led to different levels of manifestation of that trauma and defense mechanisms, anxiety, where I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was off and it caused me trouble. And anxiety usually precedes depression by several years. So I had anxiety without knowing what it was. A generalized anxiety order before being diagnosed, where I wasn't diagnosed until many years later, you mean. And people didn't have the knowledge to deal with that, you mean. You know, we didn't have the knowledge of mental health and mental health counselors, you mean. We didn't have the knowledge of that. We still had a mixture of whatever they had at the time and the old folks' knowledge, you mean, that they had, you mean, that could be a devil in you, or shaitan got you or something like that, you mean. So we had that. It wasn't an understanding that, you mean, we properly deal with it, you mean. The imams were still too much. They had to do too much. I mean, there's too much stress on them. They had to be the mufti. They had to be the general. They had to be the mental health counselor. They had to be all those things, and still not having traditional Islam amongst us. So, not able to process that, you mean, acting out the shame in different ways, different trouble, you mean, grades slipped in school, while at the same time my father is now established in the community, but that whatever those secrets that he was given, he had to be ready, because he had a big trial, and after the big trial, his business took heavy hits where he wasn't able to recover. So he loses that position. He was a man of pride, a manly man who prided himself on not having his wives at work. Then he had to go out to work and earn while he's trying to get his business, but his wives having to go out to work in the world in factories. And I mean, even my mother, she had to develop certain skills to not be in a factory where she had to help out and support. But she was born and bred. She was bred for it. She had a loving father that had her maintain that the man is the head, even if you're helping the man is the head. Now, we have a rich history as far as Black history as well. The women were out there working. They were going through some rough stuff in the history. I mean, where they maids in white folks' homes, going through different things, risking molestation and stuff. Well after slavery, I mean, while the men sometimes were restricted and stuff. You know what I mean, in their work and jailed and stuff. You know, women definitely were our backbone. Black women were our backbone. And still our backbone in picking up what we were prevented from and discriminated from and oppressed from. You mean, our Black women were there working, doing what they had to do to help out while still remaining Black, respecting Black men as the head. You know, and her family, you mean, they came up from the South, where a lot of those came up from the South. They stayed together. They stayed at somebody's house. I mean, it was commonplace for that to transition into the society, the Northern society, where you might come up and might live with a couple that had a house, and you stay at the house and till you were ready. That's what happened with my grandfather on my mother's side. Just a regular worker, stayed there, and at the last house that he stayed with, that man who owned the house, he introduced him to a realtor where he was able to get his house at a time in the 60s, where it was very affordable for a Black man to get a house. So he was able to get a house and still keep the one job. And my grandmother, she just worked sometimes, but she didn't have to work. You mean? But so my mother was raised to respect that. So she was prepared for that trial when my father's business took the hit, and he had to be prepared. And one of those preparations was from that short trip in Suzanne, where that Sheikh and Valen gave him certain secrets by Allah's lead, by Allah's permission. You mean, openness, and he was able to deal with the trial and still be confident and still feel like the man of the household, even though he couldn't keep his wives as homemakers. You mean, not having to work, or they had to go out to work, but he still had the confidence of a man and still had to do the work to start a brand new community in my hometown. Didn't have a community before that. Didn't have any community, didn't have a Muslim community. I mean, they had immigrants who would come over. It was a masjid, but they might to be there for Eid and stuff like that. That was it. It'd be Juma for years, where it would just be him and an animal doctor. There was an animal doctor who had his practice attached to the mosque. There were different buildings, different divisions, doctor's offices, and he had an animal hospital that was attached. And sometimes it would just be those two for the Juma. This is a brand new city, new generation of Muslims who coming into Islam as young. They come up with the same environment as the Muslims of his generation, who came in during a time where blacks were, marrying at even higher level than the whites. Came in a time where this is the 90s now, and they're coming to these young men after the crack era and everything like that. They're in this era. So not a lot of money from him obviously, where his business and stuff was now. And these young men were very young, where they weren't even close to being at their peak of their worth. So it was not a lot of money. It was no, they couldn't even have their own building. So they operated out of that building that the immigrants had as a mosque. They operated out of that building, and they we had the classes and stuff like that. New Muslim classes and stuff like that. Different classes, and that's what they did. They operated as a community within a community. They didn't have the control of the building, but they didn't stop them from having their community. So those different, the Egypt, the Sheikh, with the interpreting the dream in that Sheikh, and Sudan or the development, they prepared them, to start from scratch, to have, be able to have a community no matter what, even if you didn't have a building, even if you didn't have the wealth yourself, or the community members didn't have the wealth, to still have a building trying to wake up the dead hearts of blacks in a city where Islam wasn't there yet before, where they didn't know Islam. Where people, where they thought about Islam, they thought maybe the nation of Islam. They didn't. I remember growing up, when people asking me about being Muslim, they asked, was I in a nation? They didn't know about Islam. Fresh, little, small town, white people, very little black people compared to Akron, Ohio. So so he's starting from scratch. I mean, he's operating as community within community. By that time I'm growing up, so it starts getting worse as I get older. The depression comes. Anxiety comes with the depression. Like I said, the anxiety usually precedes the depression by several years. And which I will later find out that the depression and anxiety were not root causes of my issue. It's something which I believe is toxic shame, unhealthy shame, or childish shame. And at that time, you got to understand that children are narcissistic in a good way. It's not a blameworthy way for them. They feel they get taken care of their primary caretaker. Usually with the mother. She's there. She's attentive. They feel that the mother has to be attentive to their needs all the time. And it's all about them. As the child get older and they naturally grow out of that. So it's ripe for when trauma happens for them to think that they're flawed. That everything is bad. That they're defective. Interpret it that way. So when it happens, that's when you tie into the treatment as far as humbleness, because the root, that toxic shame, is the root of my depression, anxiety. But even deeper than that, the spiritual root is a lack of humbleness that was developed as a child. And thinking that my trial was so great, my trauma was so great that I had the right to consider myself defective. But it's so intricate when you cover that up and you hide from that. People cover that up with disorders, with depression. People cover that up with going the other way, because you can go two ways with it. Where one, they consider themselves as better than everybody else. So they take the false self, and they become narcissists, and they believe they're better than everybody else. They seek validation, self-validation through that false self, and seek narcissistic supply. And they carry that with them, hiding their shame that way. And they're not characterized by being feeling that shame as far as a neurotic personality, where they do feel that shame. Somebody as myself felt that shame. Heavy anxiety, high shame, high overactive ego, overactive conscious. So you go the other way, where you think you're less than, the woe is me, nobody suffers worse as me, you're the worst, you're superior in suffering. You think you're superior in suffering, or a narcissist thinks they're superior in their achievements. To run from that same problem, that same shame, that same victimization. Except for you think you're worse, that you're superior in suffering. So it's absence of humbleness that needs to be there. Humbleness that needs to be developed and taught. So that's why it's a very complex issue that you got this web of disorders and depression that you even got to get through to even get through that issue. So you need a combination of things, I believe, where you have that Tasawwuf, but you might need that. Some people need medicine, they need treatment. They need not to be told that that they just need to man up or whatever, or that it's all in their mind and they can pray. Because they're a human doing. So you tell a human doing to approach the Quran and approach prayer, when you need to be a human being to approach those things. A human doing, you're just going to approach the Quran as a human doing, that if I do this, that I can get rid of this. You're not approaching as a human being. Your identity is tied to doing. So you're not humbling yourself by following that advice. You're just trying to escape the pain, But you have to become a human being. We have to treat as an adept with the Quran and everything like that. That's why I was able to memorize at one point I didn't memorize with the proper tajweed and everything, but I did memorize the whole of Surah Baqarah at one time by being a human doing. When we're supposed to approach all acts, Quran, all acts of worship, dhikr, humbleness, as a human being, as somebody, as a servant, who recognizes that humility is key to our growth. That, as a statement of Hassan al-Basri, that humility is going out and looking at every Muslim as better than you. So if you do that, then you're going to look at your trials That's not better than anybody. That's not harder than anybody else. It's not worse than everybody else. So that gives you a key not to look at your trial as something that causes you to think you're defective. See? Then there's no need to create that false self to go either way, to go the narcissistic way, or to go to the other way, the woe is me, depressive way, and all that. There's no need if you can see that your trial is not greater than anybody else, because you're comparing. Consider yourself defective as a human being at the core, which that condition. You can read the book Healing the Shame That Binds Me by John Bradshaw, which I'll post on this page and read from this page, where he talks about that. So making that connection, and he does talk about God, and you have to recognize you're not God. So he talks about in a Christian way. We have Islam to make the connection with the Tasawwuf, to work in hand with the mental health professionals to reach anybody like that. It's a delicate issue, because you can't just tell somebody they just need to pray it away. And some people need help right away. They might need medicine, counseling. To even you got different things going on. You got psychological issues that's connected with the spiritual issues, but you got certain spaces where they have their own space and also where they overlap. You got unconscious behavior. Like as a statement of Carl Jung, till you make the unconscious conscious, it will control you, it will direct your life, and you would call it fate. So you got specialists who specialize in dealing with unconscious behaviors, and they're manifesting in dreams and different things like that, reaching the unconscious, but you're not even aware of it. So how are you going to heal that? How are you going to be a human doing and read your way out of it? Or pray your way out of it? You understand what's going on. So you need that combination in different forms. It's a different thing. So bringing that up, my father, he established a community. So stuff gets worse for me until I'm grown, and high school. That's when I really start feeling the depression. Grades start falling apart and stuff like that. I was very smart. But I couldn't handle what was going on. So grades started slipping. Barely graduated. Went to college. Football was an outlet for me, but it was still a way of hiding from the problem. Went to college, played football, but I reached that point where drinking and stuff like that. So I probably was on my way to becoming an alcoholic, drinking on Wednesday, Tuesday night. It didn't have to be a weekend party thing, college thing. I would drink on nights other than those party nights. And one time I was even drunk at a basketball pickup game and stuff like that. So I'm tanking and not know what's going on. Grades falling apart. Had to drop out of college, and I didn't actually drop off right away, but I got suspended for a semester for the grades being too low. And that's when the depression was really heavy, really heavy. And during that break, my father had talked to me before. He had tried to give me some secrets from a sheikh, which I can't say, but he gave me some. But then he did give me an initiation during that break. He was like, he didn't want to do it then. He didn't feel like he wanted me to learn. He had plans for me to go study overseas and stuff. It was always a plan for us to get traditional knowledge in our communities. But sometimes in some communities, somebody would go over and study, and they would come back like they're not even black anymore. So that was a fear for some of the elders and stuff like that. But we even talked about a specific place one time where he wanted me to go, and this was several years later after that, as in my early 20s, that we had this talk. But years before I got psychological treatment from professionals, which I still need some counseling. It can be tough for us with our condition and how we relate to ourselves and our financial situation and stuff like that. And the resources will be tough to get us the help that we need, especially good help. We need specialists for certain things. Like when we talk about, say, toxic shame, for instance, we talk about it being the root of all addictions, and all addictions needing like specialists, needing addiction counselors and stuff like that. That's why some benefit from the AA meetings. I know a brother here who talks about how he's been alcohol free for 10 years, and he goes to his AA meetings regularly, and that gives him a chance to, as John Bradshaw said, to only requirement for the group is to be messed up. You mean it'd be acceptable that you're messed up. You go in there and they say, I'm messed up. You about this, you know? So you don't feel ashamed. You don't feel, you're not gaslighted. You're not invalidated. So that's something that helps, you mean. But you talk about specialists where a lot of counselors, they don't give the long-term treatment. So it's even more money to get a specialist, and they might want to see you every week or something like that. So we don't have a lot of the resources. So we definitely need those resources. But we also, because of that need to solve, we need that strength for our hearts. We need that purification. As Imam Ghazali was one who said it's obligatory for everybody, every Muslim to have tasawwuf, to take tasawwuf under the definition that you have to remove the ruinous characteristics from your heart and replace them with the praiseworthy characteristics. For everyone, it's obligatory to have tasawwuf. Not obligatory to have a sheikh, but it is recommended, as our teacher Imam Amin said, if you learn your Islam, you learn your basics, the proper aqeedah, the proper foundations of the deen, you learn the proper way to pray, to fast, you learn the basics, then it's recommended to get a sheikh in tasawwuf, and not necessarily recommended to get tariqah, but he studied from different tariqahs. He was and his favorite is the Alawi tariqah from his teachers in Yemen. So get to that point that my father, he initiates me, but it's still something secret. Like, I didn't know this before I grew up Muslim. I didn't know anything about tasawwuf. He still had to that version of tasawwuf that he had from both groups, you mean, that it wasn't talked about. So he didn't tell anybody that he was a sheikh, you mean, and he was a sheikh by necessity. You mean, he didn't consider himself anything special or anything to be even tell anybody about. So he didn't tell anybody he was a sheikh. I didn't tell anybody he was a sheikh until after he passed 3 years ago. You mean, kept that, respected his privacy and stuff. You mean, so I didn't tell anybody he was a sheikh, but he had several students from, you mean, so my mother was the longest one because she was around him, you mean, back since the 80s, you mean, around him in both groups. Or she was a teacher in the school in the Dar that they had their own school. She was a teacher teaching one of his children, you mean, had her own husband before she became a widow, but he was her imam, and she became exposed to the Tasawwuf in the Fukr room when it became open to everybody. So she still has one of those books, the Panshur Sharif, as far as daily weird that they had with Quran and Vikrs and stuff. So she was the longest student. So he developed other students early on. And I remember like an indication of something different, you mean, where I couldn't see what it was, where he had one of his amirs come over from that community, from the second community, when I was young, and he would talk to him. It would be something, you mean, to be excited. He would see the passion that he would be talking, if you sneak in the room and stuff, and he would leave like in ecstasy, you mean, as a younger man. His young amir would leave in ecstasy, and found out later that's what he was giving him to solve and sharing him what he had learned and stuff, and initiating him. And then later, so by the time he gave it to me, I'm a young man. This is later, and I saw a change where I went back to school. It's like, even before I went back to school, I was like, I don't want to drink no more. Didn't have a drink of alcohol since then. Like, I'm worried about. Had too much anxiety to be caught up in me. And a typical black male was sleeping with a lot of females because of my anxiety condition, you mean. But I had the desire there. So then instantly like that, I didn't feel like I wanted to even try to pursue that. So it was a change. I felt renewed. I felt fresh. I wanted to learn. I wanted to study. I got involved, you mean, obviously being on my own there and not being healed, where you want to approach Islam. My approach to Islam was still like to hide, you mean, to cover up. So I would use Islam to cover up stuff. So I wasn't humble enough to be a student, and I wasn't humble enough to be a good student with my father as his student, you mean, when he was a sheikh. And I wasn't humble enough for my learning, so I read all this Bakari, I try to think I know what I was knowing. I'm reading every day, but I was learning my long because I wasn't humble. I wasn't a human being. I was a human doing. I'm still, I'm feeling right. I'm making these changes, but I still had that there where I couldn't be humble enough to be a student, whether it was any subject with Islam. So I wasn't humble enough to be a student. And he told me, like, whoever thinks they're at a station has already fallen, from what he learned. Whoever thinks they're at a station has already fallen. But I still wasn't ready to take that to heed. Wasn't humble enough. And he got to the point where he told me, he said, read the story of Musa and Khidr, read the story of Musa and Khidr, and look at yourself as Musa in that version. But I still wasn't able to be patient enough, but I still was close to him and had protection to stay in the house with him. Had somewhere to stay as I'm struggling where I couldn't even work, but he provided that service to me, to his own son, to believe in me, to speak life into me, to speak life as far as my future, whatever secrets, whatever gifts that he had naturally had, whatever he had acquired, he was able to calm my mother down. It's okay. So I was able to do everything, even though I wasn't able to work consistently for no more than a year and a half at a time. He still was able to ensure me it's okay. Ensure my mother's okay, so she wouldn't go crazy. And still rough from him. His business never recovered, so he's dealing with that, but he's still calm, still confident. He still has to deal with alpha men and lead alpha men, even though he didn't have his resources and stuff like that. He still was confident, trying to produce Muslims by Allah's lead, trying to keep the community together. It got to that point where we got another building. We had our community even without having a building, but they decided, since he already had a community, he'd be the imam of that masjid. So that's when it came in the daily prayers, where that was the benefit, one of the benefits, and what I took for granted from not being healthy enough to be well-rounded, was I was able to go to the mosque, go to 5 prayers every day, walk to the masjid, because I knew that new masjid was 10 minutes away from my parents' home, so I can walk to the 5 prayers daily, And so sometimes we take that for granted, our trials, our sickness, or Allah knows best. Allah knows best what He's protecting us from. If He gave us the full health or enough health where we can function normally, where you might not even been practicing Muslim, you might not like your poverty, you might not like your illness, but your illness might be a means where it keep you safe from falling completely off the deen, So I didn't really appreciate what I had. I was able to pray at the masjid 5 times a day, to call the adhan, to be the muadhin, to walk in a different snow, rain, sun, do stuff, for the community. We set back up the food program and had people come and feed in the neighborhood. It's a mixed neighborhood now, black, white, Mexican, feed people, to be there, to be available, So He gave me the space, He was serving his servitude, his servantship, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, serving the people, and that was the one of the ones who He served, who He gave a place of comfort, He gave a place of rest and affirmation, and time, So I had that time, I had years, where I was able to be there and do different things where I can feel comfortable about, to help him do this, whether I go pick somebody up, go take somebody there, do whatever, do something to help out his business. And that's when I was able to have my favorite jobs. I wasn't healthy enough to really put in the work, but I was able to, to have my own route where I would go and get my own customers, selling oils, and since I was on the level that he had at his peak, obviously, where he was able to make a career out of it and raise a large family and go city to city and have white markets that he was tapping into. But I would, go around to different neighborhoods, projects, and feel good. You be able to feel good. That was my favorite job. Was being like my own boss. And he kept that alive. And that was part of his serving people, serving his own family at a time where it would have been hard. Could have been hard to do. Where you're a manly man. You don't even want your wives to work, but now business is a part. He lost one wife. Recover from that. Keep your wife. Keep your kids together. Have to start a new community. people come and go. Some leave Islam totally. Even in those stages where you needed every piece didn't stay. You mean those that were going to be key pieces left. Some left completely. So people will move away. You start with another group that came in when we had the other building, where you got a mixture of Muslims from different places. You had that challenge of integrating and still remaining, having your identity and your mission to your people remaining. So it became a mixed masjid, you mean, where we had people from all different places, from Africa, Asia, different Muslims, Palestine, Syria, West Africa, East Africa, Malaysia, Indonesia. But it was all a strong brotherhood and love, companionship. And I missed them, you mean. I know they loved me, I loved them, you mean. They overlooked my flaws. They even thought that some of them thought I wasn't working because I was trying to be an imam. So they never brought any gaslighting or invalidation to me, you mean. They loved me, they treated me well, respect, you mean, adapt, you mean, even I wasn't worthy of it, it was good, you know, it was great. And so that was my home. My home away from home was the masjid. And so that was going on then. So he had his students, but it still was not known that Tasawwuf was a primary science. We still had other people's version of Tasawwuf. We still weren't ready for Al-Sunnah methodology and Aqidah and Fiqh and Tasawwuf. We were working what we had. So I'm working with that, but at the same time, stuff I wasn't humble enough to keep it weird. So I wasn't able to do the work, the combination of the work of Tasawwuf and the mental health work to get to the root of my problem. So I lost my weird, you mean? So, but I was able to still pray at the masjid, 5 times a day, and work sometimes off and on, you know what I mean? I said most times, maybe a year at a time. So then we come to me getting treatment. So I got treatment in between my first marriage, and that's when I first got treatment. I first got mental health treatment, and I needed that. I was at a point where, like, whoa, I was like almost losing it. And I had a brother, who was understanding enough that he said, I'll take you here. You don't have to tell nobody. I can tell your parents for you after. And I felt like I had the confidence to do it, like I needed it. I felt first time that I needed it. So he provided that for me. I got there, I got the treatment. I was inside a facility for a few days and got a medicine program and stuff like that for treatment of depression. Got a diagnosis later of general anxiety and depression. Like I said, it wasn't at the root. So that it was much more needed later, but it was enough where I was able to consistently work since then, where I've been working 6 years straight now since then. The longest I had ever went working. Like for the previous time, it was like 1.5 years where I was able to work a consistent job. But so I got that going, and then I got off the medicine. Didn't want to take the medicine, but I still needed to get to the root. Wasn't able to get to the root, so I wasn't healed enough, and lost my father, and that was like the hardest thing that I went through, because that was hardest thing I ever went through to this day. Nothing has been harder for me than that, as far as an individual incident. Losing my father, he was my sheikh, because even when I wasn't humble enough to be a sheikh, he still gave me different things from his foresight and firasa, to tell me this, to give me hopes for future things and predict future things, and have different dreams that he had, from the gift that he had, and other things like that, where he was still imam, sheikh, my best friend, and all that. So I still didn't know Tasawwuf was a primary science. I got married again, and we come to the coronavirus, and that's when Imam Amin, he got serious. He was serious, but he wasn't somebody. He was somebody that was traditionally trained, where he didn't like to do a lot of online teaching and stuff. But the coronavirus that brought that opportunity for him to accept that it was a good thing for him to do. So he started teaching online, different classes. I'm quarantine with the virus, and so I'm just eating it up. You mean, just every day. You mean, sometimes multiple times throughout the day. At least twice a day he would do stuff. So I'm eating it up, and he's giving it to Tasawwuf, and he brings up the Hassan al-Basri statement about humility is going out and any Muslim that you meet that you consider them as better than you. And it really stuck me. He was really, you can feel it channeling through. You mean, even though it's the internet, you mean, reaching your hearts can still connect. And I felt like I really connected with him then, you mean. And that did something. So then I'm going back to the statements of my father, what he said, and it just was connected, you mean. And even going back to a statement when I was young, where it was Imam James Kareem, where he said, all you best you can ever be is a lost, true, saved servant. And that was like an introduction to that to Tasawwuf. You mean, I wasn't aware at that time, because that's what it's about. That best you can be is a servant of Allah. You serve Allah by serving the people. You can't serve the people properly if you think you're better than them. That's why you got, like, I saw a statement, Habib Umar said he would give up the teaching if he ever felt that he was better than his students, you mean. And my father, I remember going back to his videos, and that last time it struck me from his last kupa, where he said he tries to go out and look at every Muslim that's better than him. And that's what he was taught. So that's what Imam Amin really revived that. And it did something to cause me to look at what I learned from psychology and what I was learning then. And he's pushing, and that's the first time I heard it. The soul was a primary science, you mean, from him, and he's given it from his teachers, from his different teachers in Tasawwuf. He's given that to Tasawwuf, and it struck me. And that statement of Hassan al-Basri really struck me and caused me to look and try to connect the dots as far as my condition and the roots of my condition. I knew it was toxic shame, but didn't connect. From 2 years ago, I knew it was toxic shame, but to connect the reality of what toxic shame is, and not able to be humble with the creation, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with your actions. So I was able to connect the dots there. Like I said, somebody in that situation, they feel they're flawed as a human being, and that child, you mean, is already in a narcissistic state where it's all about them anyway at a young age, you mean. So they can't see that you have to be humble. You mean, don't compare your trials to other people, but it's already there, and that trauma already was well woven with defense mechanisms. You mean, it turned into disorders then that you have to get back to it. You have to unwrap to get to it. But that reality is the humbleness, you mean. You don't compare your trials to others. You mean, you look at others' trials as better than you because you look at them as better than you. So you look at your trials, you don't look at your trials as harder than anybody else. You don't give yourself a justification to feel that you're flawed because you're not comparing your trials to anybody else. If you feel that your trials, you feel that you're flawed as a human being, you're automatically comparing. Who are you comparing to? You're comparing to others. You mean, it's not an independent comparison. You're comparing to others. You know, you're comparing it to others. That you have a justification to believe that you're flawed because your trial was that bad. But no, you humble yourself. You learn. You fight to humble yourself because it's a process. It's going to be a process for me to humble myself, to recognize that my trial was never harder than anybody else. To look at everybody else as better than me. And we know the righteous are the most severely tried. Start with the prophets, alayhi salam. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the most severely tried of his ummah. And then those who came close to him, and those who came close to him, them. So if you consider everyone better than you, then you don't look at your trials better than everybody else. So you know there's no room but to be humble and look at you having no justification for not having a proper servanthood, for not being a proper human being, which Allah has given you that status of human being, you mean, and what goes along with and the foundations of it, servanthood. So with taking that, I was able to take a weird that he gave me and able to keep that weird up. You mean, he gave me a weird. and I've been keeping that word up, and also able to fight off some demons as far as my mental health. Vast improvements, some stuff that I wasn't able to penetrate, certain things that was going on I wasn't able to penetrate, but by Allah's mercy, Allah gave me that opening through during the coronavirus, get that opening, and I was able to take that and apply it, and hopefully it's acceptable, because we can't never claim to be humble, but you hope, that you were humble enough to accept that need to be humble, or nothing we can't complain, nothing that we can claim, like sincerity itself, is a secret between Allah and the servant. Even the angels don't know. So it's nothing we can't complain. We can't claim humbleness. We can't claim sincerity. But we hope that we are humble enough. To take that mindset in, to try to look at every Muslim as better than us, to try to look at every Muslim's trial as harder than ours, and that way we can truly assist. We're not preoccupied on our own trial. We don't have the faith to do that. We don't have the faith for the prophets to do that anyway. They know their status. They know where they are. They know their trials. They know their trials are harder because they know who they are. And those that came close to them were able to get the great saints. The Abu Bakrs, the Umars, the companions, and the Alis, and those who came later who were able to know their states. But we can't guess our states. Like I said, when we think that we're some higher than we are, then we have already fallen. So that was the opening. Now the family gets to the point where we know that Islam, that Tasawwuf is a primary science. It's something for us to know. Something for all black Muslims to know, to be proud, to be able to say it. That Tasawwuf is a primary science. It's something that we're supposed to know, for something that we're supposed to have on a certain level, even the basic level. Al-Ghazali said to remove the rudeness condition, traits of the heart, replace them with the praiseworthy characteristics, and that the Tasawwuf is the inner branch, and relate to the hadith of Jibril alayhi salam, who came as somebody who was showing us adab, as somebody at a higher rank, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was raised to a rank higher than the angels. So Jibril was coming at him with adab. He came close to him, and he's asking questions with adab on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was a higher rank, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is answering those questions. And we get that from the hadith and relate Iman to the science of belief, the science of Aqidah, to relate Islam to the science of fiqh, and the science of Tasawwuf relate to Ihsan, to worship Allah as if you can see Him, and if not, to know that He sees us. So that's connecting back from Sudan, where the oral tradition goes back to the Sudan, where my father was able to tie that in by actually taking a trip to the Sudan and getting the secrets and getting the openings, coming to a sheikh of availing, and getting all those secrets, all those confidence he got for his life's work, for his mission to carry on. You know what I mean? And West Africa, the sides of the family, all the way through were from his great grandmother, who was that woman who dressed in all white, prayed facing east, prostrating towards the rising sun, praying and fasting in the woods, like I said, where she got sick, and the wolf came. Like I said, how big a wolf, we don't even realize how big a wolf is until we actually saw one in person. You mean huge? You mean we just saw pictures of them standing next to a dog. We see how big they are, and she's looking up at it. You mean, and it's that close where she can smell his breath, and it's fierce. You mean, but she wasn't fearful of it. You mean, and she was a woman of spirituality. So whatever traces that they had with slavery, maintained trace there. You mean, and sometimes it traces enough to pass stuff on. So, and then it comes down and Islam comes back, because we know many of our families had Islam before. We don't know who, but a lot of our families, a lot of the Muslims that were brought over here as slaves, their families, lost it. they're getting it back, hopefully, inshallah. Potentially, a good number of us are reuniting with Islam in our families from having it before. So that's my history where I'm at. And one last thing is my sister. So my father, he always wanted one of his kids to marry somebody from Africa. My older brother married a lady from Ethiopia. We know Ethiopia has a high status of being the first place of giving the safety, shelter in Islam. The first place to nurture Islam, was Ethiopia. When the Prophet ﷺ, his homeland had kicked him out and didn't take care to nurture Islam, Ethiopia was the first place to give Islam protection. And she's from there, so they're all kind people there and still have a special relationship to the Muslims in Ethiopia, and there's Muslims there too, even though she's not Muslim. But so then my younger sister, she married a brother from Senegal, and she's more the example of the product of my parents' marriage, I would say, because she was able to not get affected by any type of trauma, to be more example of the marriage. Because people like, man, they know my parents, they know it was good. Like, what happened to you? How did you have to go through this type of stuff? But she fortunately didn't, or she was able to have a good relationship, have with her father and stuff. I had a good relationship too. I'm just saying, a lot of our girls in the black community don't get a chance to have a good relationship with their fathers to be raised up. And this is my sister. Out of all my siblings, we're the only two that have both the biological same parents. When my father married my mother, she was a widow with a young child. My father raised my brother like he was his. So he was already regarded him as a father, and died like that. And it was others. He raised other, what you call stepchildren from his other marriage, like they were his, considered as his kids too. And he also unofficially adopted somebody as a teenager who considered him his kid too. So we consider him our brother too. So he took on other kids as a father, and that's why one sheikh said, that sheikh in Sudan, I believe, said, "Is no one deserved to be called father in that sense than the imam of an African American community." So my sister, she marries this brother from Senegal. She just happened to do it. She's raised a virgin. She's sheltered from a lot of things. Just happened to marry a brother from Senegal. She wasn't looking to marry, purposely to marry somebody from the outside of black American Muslims. Just so happened that he was a fit, and he was recommended by my sister-in-law, and boom. So then I find out years later that his father, and talking to my brother, having a random conversation with my brother-in-law, who came in and served, he became like another son instantly. Became like another brother instantly. Very, very good in his treatment. So when we found out in the conversation with him that his father had spent some time with Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse while he was a student in England, in London. And he has that picture, and I showed that picture, I'll put it up again. He has a picture with him and Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse. My brother-in-law's father has the picture while he was in London getting treatment. Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse was getting treatment. And with that, whatever secrets, whatever was exchanged, whatever connection was formed, something was given for, by the time the Johnny family, when Sheikh Hassan Sisi, they would travel, whenever they would come to the car, they would stay at the house of my brother-in-law. So all that was good. You can imagine they're hosting them, probably was a result of a dua, the dua that he made for my brother-in-law's father, they're part of that dua. So they get that dua, and whatever that entailed, who knows what came out of that dua. That my sister's marriage to my brother-in-law might be part of that dua that Sheikh Ibrahim Niasse made. Might be part of one of the duas that Sheikh Hassan Sisi made, or one of the other Sisi family members made, and then visited them as a guest. When you had a guest, when you with your guests, you serve them too by praying for them. So it just could be one of those moments by Sheikh Hassan Sisi. They're visiting my brother-in-law's family, where he sees him and he makes a dua for him, you mean, to bless him, you mean. So when I do my regular program, when I bring on a guest, I've been going over to my brother-in-law's and he lets me go in there and use the laptop. That way I can have a guest on there without there being any echo or anything like that. I don't like to have a guest on my phone because it works better when you use that format if you have a laptop. That way it's not an echo. It's not, you know what I mean? It's a good quality. So I use that, you mean, and I call that, you mean, that's like a studio. One of the duos, maybe a Sheikh Ibrahim Nias or Sheikh Hassan Sisi or one of the family, you mean, because them spending time and them hosting the Sisi family as their guests, you mean, coming from the relationship formed between his father and Sheikh Ibrahim Nias and whatever secrets and stuff that go along with that, you mean. So whatever, you mean, might be in store for my nephew, that's the next generation on that side, as far as Tasawwuf, that whatever was going on our side as far as Tasawwuf in the family, you mean. And us families coming together, for his family from Senegal, and we don't know exactly in West Africa from our sides, but we have the oral tradition on one side from my father from Sudan. So that's some of the history. If there's any questions, anybody can ask. If not, I'm going to wrap it up. But my pleasure, you know, to talk about this history. And as we move and try to move into even better understanding the Tasawwuf in our family. And my father was one of those who, who looked ahead like that. Was whatever gifts he had that were by Allah's leave, they didn't think he was anything special about. He would have dreams, so he told me some stuff, about our kids and my kids and stuff like that, that he felt, that they could take things to the next level and stuff, so we'll see. You have to do our part, to help that generation and stuff like that, and be of service to people, be of service to our communities that need that service. That's what this all was about. Where it was in Sudan, it was a kitchen for 900 years. It was operating. Food kitchen. That might have been one of the things. That really touched them too. They had a food kitchen 900 years serving the people. Anybody that needed something, needed to serve the people. Okay, so I think that's all I got. I can't see. Let me see. I can't see any questions anywhere. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and close out. If anything that was in error, anything that was offensive, I pray that you all forgive me, that Allah forgive me. Anything in error is my fault and comes from me. Anything that needs to be clarified, please do not hesitate to reach out to me for clarity. I'm going to do us with you all, and anything that was good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and due to Allah's mercy, not due to my merit. We ask Allah to forgive us all, purify our hearts, and I'm gonna do a Fatiha dedicated. Before I go, so Sheikh, hooked us into a line at the South, the Ba Alawi. It's not the only line he got, but the Ba Alawi is his favorite line, where he considers the purest sentence of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And you got Ahmed bin Isa al-Hajr, who was living at the time of Salaf. He was living at the same time of Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, who was living around the same time, and he left Yemen. So I'll read that real briefly, because he left Yemen. So he says, when the Imam, the immigrant to Allah, the ancestor of the Sayyids, Ahmed, my master Ahmed bin Isa bin Muhammad bin Ali bin Jafar al-Sadiq, may Allah be pleased with them all, saw how innovations had appeared, passions multiplied, and opinions diverged in Iraq. He immigrated from it and traveled the earth until he reached the land of Hadramaut, where he stayed until his death. And Allah blessed his descendants, a great many of whom became renowned for their knowledge. worship, sainthood, and gnosis. Through the barakah of this trustworthy imam who fled from sedition to protect his religion, they remained safe from the innovations and the falling of the misguiding passions into which certain other factions of the prophetic household fell. May Allah reward him on our behalf with the best reward he has ever granted a father on behalf of his children. May he raise his degree along with his noble forefathers in the highest heaven, Iliyun, and give us to join them in goodness and safety, having neither changed our religion nor fallen into temptation. So this was in the section of doctrine by Imam Abdullah ibn al-Alawi al-Haddad, and the Book of Assistance, which is one of the books of Tasawwuf and one of the concise summarized books. Imam Ahmed Muhammad posted something about it from Habib Umar about the merits of the book, and Imam Amin was talking in his commentary about how he took 70 of members of his family from the prophetic household, and went to Yemen to Hadramaut, and they became some of the best scholars and masters of all different sciences, and even Imam Ahmed bin Isa Muhajir, because he immigrated. He got the name Muhajir, the title Muhajir. Some consider him to be at the level of Mujahid, level of Mujtahid, where he can give independent fatwa. But Imam, his descendant, Imam Haddad, was considered by many to be the Mujahid of the 12th century and also a Mujtahid. Where the story was, Al-Qadr, he was telling the story of Al-Qadr came to him and he asked him to say what his methodology was as far as fiqh, and he didn't say it. He said, why didn't you say what's on your heart? And he said because of his adab for his family that came before, that he didn't want to, who were all Shafi and fiqh, that he didn't want to say that he reached that level where he could give verdicts, religious verdicts. He reached the level of Mujtahid, the level of Mujtahid where he can give verdicts independent of Imam Shafi, where he can go directly to the primary sources himself. But he didn't say that. He didn't declare his status like that. As we know, was as far as the Sunni school, only 4 absolute mujahids were verified where they got a consensus, but that didn't mean others didn't come after them and reach that level, that same level of mujtahid. We had different ones who had different schools, where we even had like they were talking about Sufyan al-Thawri, where his school survived to the time of Imam Ghazali. So those other ones that we learned about, Layth bin Sa'd in Egypt, and Imam al-Azad in Sham, different ones, Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan al-Uyayni, and different ones throughout time, who reached the level of mujtahid, where they can go directly to the primary sources to give fatwa, and could have their own schools. But nobody got the consensus to reach that level. Of Imam Malik, Shafi, Ahmed, and Abu Hanifa, where nobody got the consensus, and none of those schools before who had that level during their times survived. Their schools didn't survive. So Imam Ahmed bin Isa al-Hajr, like I say, he goes back to Imam Jafar Sadiq, who's the son of Muhammad al-Bakr, who's the son of Ali, Zain Abudin, son of Hussein, son of Ali, and Fatima, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then his son Ubaidullah, Imam Ahmed's son Ubaidullah, was the father of Alawi. That's where the name Alawi comes from, what bears their branch, and their school of Tasawwuf about Alawi comes from that name of the grandfather of Ahmed bin Isa al-Hajr. Al-Alawi comes from that, and that's where the line of Imam Haddad descended. So we just all this Tasawwuf on that line, and that the fiqh. As far as this, even though Maliki might have benefited from the fiqh, his fiqh, and the fiqh of his students, the Shafi fiqh comes to that line. So the Tasawwuf that we're talking about, as far as Imam Amin, comes from that line. My favorite line that he has. He studied other schools of Tasawwuf, other Taruq, but this was his favorite about Alawi. favorite line and favorite line of the descendants of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so that is it. I said, may Allah forgive us and guide us and keep our feet firm on the path, and may allow us to be humble and true service of His, and grant us forgiveness, grant us paradise. And I'm going to say Fatiha and dedicate the reward to all my teachers, all our teachers, all the way back to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Jazakallah khairan for those who listen. May Allah reward you all, guide you all, forgive us all. It was my pleasure. Enjoy your day. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.